Hey guys, so I'm over here grading our plot mountain for Tuck Everlasting. So we just finished the book, and I know I made a video the other day about some of the funny things I was having to explain to my kids, but I wanted to go ahead and do a video of my book review because this is my 7th time to read it, because obviously this is my 3rd year and I read it to 2 classes every year, and I of course had to read it myself before I taught it to my kids. So yeah, and I think every year I'm just gonna kind of post like the highlights of like how my kids felt. So of course I said in my other video that the beginning is kind of really boring because it's just explaining a bunch of things in a really complicated way that my kids have no clue what it means. So I had to break everything down step by step and tell them what it meant. But once we got past that part, it kind of went along a lot smoother because they are more invested in the storyline. So the overall theme of this book is immortality a blessing or a curse? Now, the Tuck family, they have been blessed with immortality. When they were traveling through this wood, they always refer to the wood instead of the woods. It drives my kids crazy. I don't know. So if you hear the wood, it's the woods. And in the wood is a spring. The Tucks stopped at the spring on their way through, and they all took a drink from the spring, including the horse. The only one that didn't drink from the spring is the cat. Okay? So come to find out that 20 years go by, and Miles had gotten married, and his wife and his kids were aging, but he was not. So his wife accused him of witchcraft, and they had to move, and now they're like, that's when they figured out that they were immortal, and they like traced their steps back. The cat had long died, and then they realized, oh, the cat was the only one that didn't drink, and they figured it out. So coming back to the story, we find Winnie Foster, who is a sad, lonely child, and her family is very prim, very proper. They live in a touch-me-not house, and when I explained the touch-me-not house, they're like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, well, it's got kind of like a bad aura, bad vibe. I have to use their language about how people just don't want to mess with it. They're the oldest family, like they're the standard. And she's talking and befriending a toad because she has no other friends. And the kids are like, well, that's really sad. I'm like, yeah, it kind of is pretty sad. And she's telling the toad how she's going to run away. And so the next day, she ends up going into the woods because she hears the day before a tinkling little melody coming from the wood. Her grandmother said it was elves, and my kids cracked up because they're like, Grandma's cray-cray. And I'm like, yeah, Grandma is kind of cray-cray. And there was also a stranger that had appeared, and this is when I was talking about the stranger danger, and he heard the melody too. So she goes in the wood the next day to investigate, and she sees this boy, and oh my God, her heart stops, and she has a huge crush. And we find out that the boy says he's 104, but she's like, no, how old are you really? And he says 17, and she's 10, turning 11. So my kids always are like, oh my God, that's disgusting. And so I had to explain how in the 1800s, we just lived differently, and it wasn't as disgusting as we think it is now. So that's definitely a fun one to explain. And they end up kidnapping her because when he sees this boy drink from the spring, and he stops her. And so they kidnap her because they have to make her understand, like, she can't drink from the spring. And they end up telling her a story. And lo and behold, the man in the yellow suit, he followed them and now knows their secret. And my kids are like, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do with that? I was like, I don't know, we're gonna have to read and find out. That's what I like about this book. It's got a lot of things, and we purposely stop it on parts where they're like keeping wanting more, and I love ending that way because it gives me some sort of control over them. Anyway, sorry, this is gonna be super long if I keep going. They end up taking Winnie, and they explain everything, and the Tucks are so nice to her, and she's feeling so conflicted, and she keeps going back and forth on her feelings. And my kids are getting so annoyed with her, like, are you happy? Are you sad? Will you just make up your mind? I'm like, well, she has conflicting feelings. Like, can you blame her? She got kidnapped, but they're really nice to her. So, like, she's lonely. She doesn't have friends, and they seem like her friends. And so that was a whole conversation. And, computer went off. Anyways, so they were pretty upset that she just kept going back and forth. And eventually the man shows up and he's like, hey, I'm gonna sell the water. I'm gonna make Winnie my live demonstration, since I told her parents I know where she is and they've given me the wood where the spring is. So they said, absolutely not. You are not taking our girl. And because they felt protective over her in the 24 hours that they knew her. And so May takes a shotgun and hits him on the back of the head with the butt of the shotgun, so she doesn't shoot him. So every year I have to reiterate, did not shoot him. I'm hitting things. She hit him on the back of the head with the shotgun. And my kids, of course, freak out over there, and they're like, oh my God, Mrs. Smith, this is dangerous. This is not okay. We're reading this in school. I'm like, I know, right? Yeah. And so then the whole thing spirals out, and May goes to jail, but they said she goes to jail, she's gonna go to the gallows, but May can't go to the gallows because she's immortal, and then if she goes to the gallows, everyone's gonna know their secret. So they have to come up with a plan. And Winnie's like, well, let me help with this plan. Like, I'm the whole reason that May's going anyways. Like, I love May, I wanna help. And so, she ends up helping May escape, and Jesse gives her a bottle of the spring water. He's like, when you're 17, please drink this and come find us. Like, I want to be with you. And I tell them, like, he basically proposes to her. And of course, they're like, oh my God, she's 7, he's 10, and she's 17. And I'm like, I know, but pretend, like, we know, like, this is different times. And so my girls are like, aww. And yeah, they all make fun of that. But we find out in the epilogue that she didn't drink the water, that she lived and died, and she has her own opinion. And of course the kids are mad. Like, I had one kid flip a chair, like, not like angrily flip a chair. It was like very playfully, and like we have that relationship, like it's okay. But it was just, they had a very strong reaction to Winnie not choosing Jesse, and she got married and had other kids, or had kids with somebody else. They really, really wanted Winnie and Jesse to get together, and I was like, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but they did not. And that's how my day ended, was by all the kids arguing about if she should or should not drink the water to be with Jesse, and how most of my girls are heartbroken. But yeah, those are the highlights, Minister.